All right, guys. So this section of 5.4, solving radical equations, it should be a little bit review, but there are a couple of problems in here that are a little bit different. All right. So this problem here with A, I want to start off. It is a review problem. I do want to just go through it one more time, make sure everybody's okay. But the big thing that what you're gonna have to do now is you're gonna have to check for extraneous solutions. And all extraneous solutions mean is you'll get an answer. All right, you'll do everything mathematically correct, you'll get a correct answer, but then you have to plug it back in to the equation to check to see does it actually work. Okay, so that's all extraneous solution means is does the answer work. All right, so when we go through this, the very first thing I want to do is I want to change this radical notation. I want to change that to rational exponent notation. All right. So remember, it's just going to be an exponent with a with a radical um, with a fraction exponent. All right. And I just noticed a mistake. This is supposed to be a 5. Sorry about that, guys. My fat fingers, I can't type. Okay, that's supposed to be a 5. The index is supposed to be a 5. All right. So when we do this, I have negative 31 is equal to 1 minus. Now I have 4 times 9 minus x. And remember, we're going to have a fraction. The 3 is going to be the exponent on the parentheses is going to be my numerator. The index, that 5, remember it was supposed to be a 5, I screwed up. That 5 is supposed to be the index is the denominator. Okay, so now that I have it written in rational exponent form, first thing I need to do is just like we've always done is what do I need to get rid of first? Well, the first thing I'm going to get rid of is that 1. All right. So how do I get rid of a positive 1? Let's subtract 1 from both sides. All right. So I subtract 1 from both sides. I end up with negative 32 is equal to, I bring down, please make sure you don't forget that negative there. All right. Please do not forget the negatives. So we have 4 times the quantity 9 minus x to the 3/5 power. Okay. Now, the next thing I need to get rid of is I'm going to get rid of this negative 4. Well, if you paid attention to how I said this was negative 4 times. Well, how do I undo multiplication? I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. All right. So negative 32 divided by negative 4 gives me positive 8. And then here, that negative 4 and that negative 4 will cancel each other out. So now I'm left with 9 minus x raised to the 3/5 power. Okay. Now, how do I get rid of that exponent there? Right? How do I get rid of that negative? I mean, that I'm sorry, that 3/5. Well, remember what we talked about before. It helps if I erase. Right? Like what we talked about before. We want the exponent to be a 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise both sides to the reciprocal. All right. So 3/5, the reciprocal is 5/3. So I have to do that to both sides. All right. Let me just give myself a little bit of room here. So I have 8. So I'm going to raise both sides to the 5/3 power. All right. So then what happens when you do that? When you do that, remember you have a power to a power, you're multiplying. So those cancel each other out. So then on your calculator, 8 to the 5/3 power, I ended up with 32, right? And I kid you not, I just grabbed my calculator. 8 to the 5/3 power is equal to 32. Then I have is equal to 9 minus x. And just like always, right? Just like since freshman year, 8th grade, whenever you learned how to solve equations, let's get rid of everything that's not attached to the x. So how do I get rid of that 9? I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. So then 32 minus 9 gives me 23. is equal to negative x. Please don't forget the negatives, all right? And then divide both sides by -1. And then I end up with x is equal to -23. All right, so now we've done everything correctly. Every step is correct. But now we just have to make sure, is this answer extraneous or not? We have to make sure to see if the answer works. So what I do is I go back to the original problem, all right? So back to the original problem, -31 is equal to 1 minus 4 times the fifth root of 9 minus x raised to the third power, all right? And we ended up with x equaled, all right? We ended up with x equaled -23. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug that in and check to see if it worked. Okay. So anywhere I see x, I'm plugging in at -23. So I have -31 is equal to 1 minus 4 times the fifth root of 9 minus, and then now here's where I'm plugging in the -23. Well, because I have two negatives next to each other, I need that extra set of parentheses raised to the third power. And honestly, this is just calculator work, okay? But I want to make sure that you guys, as you're doing this on your calculator, because I'm going to show almost every single step. As you're doing this on your calculator, I'm hoping that you feel comfortable doing this. So the fifth root of, well, what do we end up with here? Those two negatives become positive. This ends up being 9 plus 23 raised to the third power. So I ended up with this big old funky number, 32,768. All right. So I just typed in my calculator, 9 plus 23, raised that to the third power, and ended up with this number. Then I took the fifth root. All right. I took the fifth root of it. So I have -31 is equal to 1 minus 4 times the fifth root of this big old ugly number gave me 8. -31 is equal to 1 minus 32. -31 equals -31. So the entire time, this was a question. All right. Does the left side equal the right side? All right. So those are supposed to be a bunch of question marks over the equal signs. Well, -31 equals -31. So we know our answer was correct. And it's not extraneous. Okay. So I showed you how to check it. And I'm showing you that it's not extraneous. So that -23, all right, that -23 is our answer. All right. So this first one should have been review. Okay. Let's look at the second one here. The second one, x plus 1 is equal to the square root of 7x plus 15. All right. Now just keep in mind, remember there's supposed to be a 2 sitting there. Okay. So rewriting it like we've always been, x plus 1 is equal to 7x plus 15 to the 1/2 power. Remember, to the 1/2 power is the same as saying square root. Right? Let me at least make that look like a 7x. All right, a little bit better. Okay, now, you notice I have x on both sides. All right, but I'm not going to worry about the left side because right now, what do I have to worry about? I got that fraction exponent. I have to do something with that. Well, just like we've always done, I need to get rid of that fraction exponent. So what did I do? Raise it to the reciprocal. 1 over 2 is 2 over 1, or just 2. So I have to raise both sides to the second power. All right. Now, what happens when I raise the left side to the second power? X plus 1 squared. What does that tell me? That tells me x plus 1 times x plus 1. All right. The right side. What happens to the right side? Well, on the right side, both of those things cancel out. We end up with 1. All right. We multiply those together. We end up with 1. So we end up with 7x plus 15. Now we got a little bit of work ahead of us. All right, on the left side, we're going to have to do FOIL or double distributive property, all right, whatever it is that you like to call it. All right, FOIL, double distributive property. We're just going to be multiplying. All right, so when you multiply this out, we end up with x squared, because x times x is x squared. X times 1 gives me x. 1 times x gives me x. 1 times 1 gives me 1. And I'm just going to copy the denominator, the right side down, sorry. Now on the left side, I got two terms that are the same. All right, so I end up with x squared plus 2x plus 1 is equal to 7x plus 15. Now remember, hopefully you remember, when you have something squared, all right, x squared, we need to solve. We have to force it to equal 0, all right? So we have to force this to equal 0. It has to equal 0. So what do I do to force this to equal 0? I'm going to subtract 7x from both sides, all right? Keeping like terms together. Subtract 15 from both sides. Again, keeping like terms together. And then what happens? That cancels, that cancels. I end up with equaling 0, like what I needed. All right, so then the left side, x squared plus minus. All right, so 2 minus 7 gives me negative 5x. 1 minus 15 gives me negative 14 equals 0. Now we could factor, all right, remember factoring, we would have the two parentheses like that equals 0. We could factor. Remember, that doesn't always work. If it does and you're good at it, go for it. But what always works is the quadratic formula. All right, so remember the quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, that always works. If you're comfortable with if you're comfortable with factoring, give it a try. Sometimes if it works real fast. All right, if it doesn't work, then you have to jump to quadratic formula. All right, so what do we know? Well, we know that a is 1, b is negative 5, c is negative 14. All right, so just remember, there's a, there's b, there's c. Okay, now let's start plugging stuff in. X is equal to negative, b is negative 5, plus or minus the square root, b squared. All right, so b is negative 5 squared. Remember, inside the parentheses, please. When you're substituting, inside parentheses. Minus 4 times a is 1, c is negative 14, all over 2 times a is 1. All right, so I have x is equal to, well, these two negatives here are going to give me a positive. So I have positive 5 plus or minus square root. All right, just grab your calculator. Remember the discriminant? All right, just type all that stuff in. Just type in the discriminant. I don't need you guys showing me a whole bunch of work. All right, it's a calculator problem. We end up with 81 all over 2. So x is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 81 is 9 over 2. And remember, how many answers are we supposed to have? All right, how many answers are we supposed to have? We're supposed to have two answers. Well, where are my two answers? There's my two answers, plus and minus. Okay, so when I do this plus and minus, let's split them up. X is equal to 5 plus 9 over 2, and x is equal to 5 minus 9 over 2. All right, so 5 plus 9, 14 over 2, x is equal to 7. 5 minus 9, negative 4 over 2, x is equal to negative 2. All right, so there's our two answers. In the past, we would stop right there. But what do we have to do? We have to check, do those two answers work? All right, so we have to check to see if they work. I know it's a pain, but we have to check. Okay, so um, let me see, what were our answers again? Our answers were is equal to 7 and x is equal to -2. All right, so there are our answers. Okay, now we're going to have to do this twice. We're going to have to try both of these answers out. So x plus 1 is equal to the square root of 7x plus 15. All right, so I'm going to try that 7 first. 7 plus 1. I want to know. All right, so there's my question mark. Does it equal 7 times 7 plus 15? All right, so again, the very first thing, I'm just checking that one first. Okay, 7 plus 1 gives me 8. And then grab your calculator, 7 times 7 plus 15. Plug that in, you end up with the square root of 64, right? And then square root of 64 is 8. So does it work? Yes, it does. Left side and the right side both equal. All right, let's try the next one. Now I'm going to try x equals -2. Okay, so I have -2 plus 1 is equal to square root of 7 times -2 plus 15. Well, left side gives me -1. All right, and again, there should be a question mark over there because you don't know if the left side or the right side equal. I get lazy. 7 times -2, -14. -14 plus 15 gives me 1. -1, square root of 1 is 1. Do those equal? No, they do. No, they do not. All right, so then what do I know? I know that x equals -2 is extraneous. So we did all the work correct. Everything was correct. But it just turns out that x equals -2 is an extraneous answer. Right? It's an extraneous solution because we did everything mathematically correct. But then when we plugged it in, over here, right? When we plugged it in right here, the left side and the right side don't equal. So we know that then -2 is extraneous. So you have to tell me that it's extraneous. All right, last problem. All right, you notice it's the same thing. All right, so if you want to pause the video and give this one a try yourself, and then you can just fast forward, and check to see if you got the same answers. If not, then you can go back and look at it, see if you had any mistakes. Okay, so remember it's to the 1/2 power. And then what do? I raise both sides to the second power because I want this to become 1. All right. So x minus 6 times x minus 6 is equal to 4x minus 24. All right, again, FOIL, double distributive property. All right, whatever it is you want to do, I'm going to go through this a little bit faster now. All right, hopefully I don't screw anybody up, but I mean, at this point, guys, seriously, you should know how to do FOIL or double distributive property. You should know how to multiply. So we end up with x squared minus 6x plus 36 is equal to 4x minus 24. All right, like terms. So x squared minus 12x plus 36 is equal to 4x minus 24. All right, again, I need this thing to equal 0. So what am I going to do? I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides, and I'm going to add 24 to both sides. So we have x squared minus 16x plus 60 equals 0. And again, you could go through and try factoring it, see if it works for you. I will just do the quadratic formula. Okay. So again, remember x equals -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. There's a, there's b, there's c. You're just plugging everything in. So x is equal to negative, b is negative 16. So I have those two negative signs, plus or minus, negative 16 squared in parentheses, 4 times 1 times c is 60. The whole thing over 2 times 1. All right, so I have x is equal to positive 16 plus or minus. Again, I'm just grabbing my calculator. I'm just typing all that crap in. All right, not going to use the square root sign, but I'm just going to type everything in. We end up with 16 over 2. So I have 16 plus or minus the square root of 16 is 4 over 2. Again, here's where I have my two answers. All right, x is equal to 16 plus 4 over 2, and and x is equal to 16 minus 4 over 2. So 16 plus 4 gives me 20 over 2, so I end up with 10 there. And then over here, I end up with 6. All right? Oh, crap. I mean, at least make it look like a 10. All right. So 10 and 6. All right, let's check. Let's make sure if anything's extraneous. So x equaled 10 and x equaled 6. Okay? So just like the last problem, we're going to check. So x minus 6 is equal to the square root of 4x minus 24. Remember, wherever I see x, I'm plugging in one of those numbers. So I have 10 minus 6 is equal to, there's my question mark, the square root of 4 times 10 minus 24. 10 minus 6 gives me 4. And then square root 4 times 10 minus 24 gives me 16. So 4 is equal to 4. So we know that one worked. Okay, so we're good with x equals 10. Now let's check x equals 6. All right. So I have 6 minus 6 is equal to the square root of 4 times 6 minus 24. All right. And again, I'm just checking to see, do those two sides equal? 0 is equal to 4 times 6 minus 24 is 0. So the square root of 0 is 0. So yes. All right. So in this case, x equals 10 and x equals 6, both of them do work. So, all right. So in this case, both answers work. Sometimes both will work. Sometimes one will be extraneous. And then there's some times where both might be extraneous. Okay. So you have to check. You have to check them. Again, this work over here, that work right there, make sure you show just really quickly. All right. You don't have to show as many steps as I did, but just please make sure you show really quickly that yes, you did try it. All right. Because to be honest, it's just calculator work. Okay. But please make sure that you show that you did try it.